Hello, my name is Tom Knappich. I am a professional photographer and have been for about 13 years now. My background is in photography and photojournalism at North Texas State. I spent a lot of time in the corporate world, but came back to photography full time in 2006. I have specialized in weddings and senior portraits, do a lot of portrait work, a lot of people photography, but also do real estate photography and architectural work. I am an instructor at Collin College and have been for 7 years now. I teach all the courses, but have been concentrating on the basics and advanced courses and Lightroom and occasionally Photoshop. Thanks for having me. This is the second time to judge competition, and the print competition is a little bit different to do, and it's a little bit more challenging for the judge to go through that. One of the things that I do include in judging prints, primarily because it is one of the things that is part of a print, is the matting on a print, whether the matting enhances the photograph or distracts from the photograph. So you will hear me comment on the matting as part of the composition. If there's no comment, that means the matte enhanced the photograph and it was done well and we didn't have any issues with it. If there is any issues with the matte distracting from the photograph, then I will mention that. Thanks for having me again. My website, if you care to look at it, is tomkphotography.com. Take care. So in the entry category, the first photograph is Girl in the Fountain 2 by Sam Lucas. This photograph I scored a 9, primarily because you've got a really nice concept here. The lighting on the girl's face is beautiful. The fact that it's a slow speed is giving it a little bit of blur, but that also causes the issue of the picture of the girl with the good lighting on her face. You're drawn from that to the man in the background on the cell phone, which is the sharpest point of the image. So the sharpness, the blur of the girl worked against you in this photograph. He's framed nicely between two trees in the background. There's a glow on his cell phone that draws you away from it. Your matting is great, so it's a great attempt. Without the distractions in the background, I think you probably would have had what you were looking for. The next photo in the entry-level category is Mirror Image with Catherine Moulton. It's a nice image, a nice quality image, matted nicely, perfect title for it. Only things I would do on this one is I scored this at 12. Only things I would look for is there's a couple major things in the front of the photograph that pull your eyes away from your subjects. Not really too badly, but there's a couple marks up front that you may want to get rid of. Right down the center, so it does draw your attention away from it a little bit. And the other thing is, watch your sharpening. Sometimes sharpening can get a little bit overzealous, and you do get some really heavy pixelization going on because of that. And you have some of that around the duck's eyes and the top coloring, so it causes you to lose a little bit of the color in those. But otherwise, a nice image. Congratulations on that. Tired Hands Relaxing by Denny Farmer. I scored this one 13 points, and it is the third place image. Beautiful photograph, lots of good detail on the hands. One of the things that happened to you, though, is the matte does cut the end of the finger off, so when you're looking at the full image, I'm sure in digital, that you'll get that full image, but the way it's matted, you do lose the fingertip on the one hand, and since the hands are the emphasis, that's probably not you want to pull that matte away from that when you position it. Only thing I would do differently on this, and it's just a personal thing, is I'd love to see this in black and white. Then it would concentrate on those, the veins as opposed to the skin. So it would be really interesting to see in black and white. Good job. And the second place entry is Life Ring Against Approaching Storm by Jeffrey Serenbach. I scored this one a 14. Great composition. You've got great leading lines taking us out to the sign, and the sign being the biggest contrast in the photograph really does a good job of drawing the attention there. But the long exposure really works for you. You've got a very good contrast between that sharp red square in the middle there and all the softness around it, but your rocks are good and soft. The rocks up front, them being nice and sharp, one of the things that is the downside of the image is you've got about 4 little pools of water that look like they were coming up during the exposure, and they actually on the print look almost like marks on the print. So it took me a while to look at it and to make sure that that wasn't something that happened to the print in transport. The long exposure worked really well on the water around, but it poked up through a couple cracks as it was coming through there, and the camera makes those appear to be marks. Good job. And the first place photograph is the Flying Spoonbill by Ngoc Wong. I scored that one 14 points as well. Great detail on the face of the spoonbill. Overall good processing on this photograph, and the print turned out quite nicely. I do like the fact that you gave, the spoonbill a little bit of active space up front, so it gives it the movement that we need in the photograph. Without that active space, it would be sort of just dead in the water, so it's a great thing to get that active space up front. Great movement in the background. So overall, just a really good photograph. Great print and nice matting on it. Congratulations. The next category is the intermediate category. Writing the English style. I rated this one a 7 by Jack Huang. The primary issue with this photograph is the way that it is matted. It's actually not matted. It's taped to a board that has been used before. So when you're entering a print competition, you really need to pay attention to mats. That is one of the things that in any high-level competition, the matting is important. So other thing I may have done with this Jack is not quite as much sharpening. Although sharpening works really well, this one, the horse is really, really heavily sharpened. Primarily on this one, though, it was the matting, and that would be the thing to pay attention to. Diamond Ring by Parvin Styles. I've given this one a 9. Great choice of mat for this one. Using the black mat just sort of enhances the overall photograph. The photograph itself, I'm assuming this was the eclipse that we just had. A lot of your highlights are just totally blown out. It created an effect that does look like a diamond ring. So great use of that photo, and congratulations. Hard Left by Richard Otto. I've rated this one a 10. It's an excellent photograph. The only downside in the photograph is that if you take a look at the Line-X barrel, it's very crisp and very sharp. But if you look at the horse is soft and the rider is soft, which basically says your speed was a little slow. And some of the detail that we lose on that is the dirt coming off of the right hoof. And the horse is just a little bit soft in the picture. It's an excellent shot. Just probably I would have raised my speed a little bit so that I can get that to stop sharply, so that the horse is what is the most predominantly sharp thing in the picture. Next photograph is Pleasure Pier, Galveston, USA by Mary Jean Blevins. I've rated this one a 12. It's a great job of, using post-processing effectively, creating a different look to the tower. The only thing, and if for whatever reason it stuck in my mind, is it went from Pleasure Pier, Galveston to a tragic accident because we lost all the connections from the people on the ride up to the tower because of the white background. The lines disappeared. In a couple cases, it looks like they're free-falling and terrorized. So I know it's a silly thing, but it changed the complexion of the picture because we can't see any of the connections. So it went from a ride to people free-falling off of the ride. For what it's worth, it's still a fun picture. Next photograph in the intermediate category is the Scout. I've rated that one a 12 as well. Very good attempts on these shots. Very good pictures. This one is a little bit soft. If you look around his eyes, you can see the softness in the eyes and on his face. And when you're trying to capture the wrinkles and the age in there, we got a little softness to it, and we got a little blowout in his forehead, which takes those wrinkles out of there. So when you're photographing somebody that you're trying to get that age to tell a story, make sure you get all those wrinkles in there. Don't soften them up in any way. Next up in the intermediate category is Bodyscape by Earl Snoga. and I rated that one a 12 as well. Beautiful lighting. The lighting setup is nice, coming from both directions. You got a nice soft light on there. Only thing that I would say about this photograph is it shows up fairly soft on the print. So her face is a little bit soft, her hair is a little bit soft, which could be an effect. Great shot. Nice lighting. Sunday evening on Ross Avenue in the Dallas Arts District, and that's Daniel Daly. I've given this one a 13. Very nice detail on this shot. Nice contrast between the old building, the new building, and then having a third building in the reflection on the building. Nice framing using the clouds to frame the buildings. Nice leading lines down on the bottom walking down the street. So altogether a nice photograph, printed well. The choice of paper looks like a metallic kind of print, really added to that sharpness of the picture. Good job. And the third place photograph in the intermediate category is Fish Pond by Sidney Futrell. Very nice photograph. The action and the water creates a really nice, unique effect, especially like the fish in the bottom with his mouth open. They obviously were looking for the food you were going to throw, but it's got a lot of color, very Japanese style look to it because of the koi. Very nice photograph. Next up is the second place photo in the intermediate category, and I must admit it was a really tough choice between second and first. If I could have a co-leader, it would be the second and first place choice in this category. But the second place is Swedish Fish by Karina Johansson, and it is rated a 14. Beautiful colors, beautiful detail. The print itself is just absolutely gorgeous. So good job on that one. You've got the colors really standing out on this one. And the first place photograph in the intermediate category is Wet Text by Mark Bernthal. Very different photograph from the Swedish Fish. Both of them are co-leaders, in my opinion, in this category, but this is an outstanding street photograph. The fact that there's no people around and you've isolated the subject, he's texting, it's raining, he has no place to go, it tells a whole story to it. So this is a very full photograph from a compositional standpoint. The fact that there is nobody else in the photograph and he's alone really makes it stand out. Excellent job. Perfect street photograph. And in the advanced category, the first photo is young gulls. Actually, very nice composition on the photograph, but the photograph is very soft. Not only are the gulls soft, but the nest is soft and the background is soft. There's really nothing in the photograph that is sharp and draws your attention, except for possibly the mother's beak. Really, that's the issue with the photograph. It's just a very soft photograph in print. I would just really use a bigger depth of field. Next photograph in the advanced category is The Kings. I've rated this one a 10. It's actually a very good photograph. Nice detail, a little bit of sharpness in the front on the coats of the guys, but still it's a very nice photograph. It's just that it's glued to the mat board. You know, again, I'm just really particular because I know that it's something in any professional print competition that the mat must be a huge part of that photograph and how it's presented. Great photograph, love the photograph. The matting is what is the drawback on this one. The Shaft of Light is next up in the advanced category, and I've rated this one a 10. It's a good photograph, got some really good characteristics. With the sharpening that's been applied to the photograph, the highlights have sort of blown out, and up along the ladder, you can see some of the highlights have patterns inside of them, so they tend to, instead of enhance and use that shadow, they somewhat draw away from it. Probably would have just gone back a little bit on the sharpness of the photograph when I printed him. Beautiful photograph, it just a little bit over sharp. Next up is Alaskan Stream, and this is actually the third place by Walter Brock. I've rated this a 12. Very nice effects with the long exposure and great detail on the non-moving objects, the trees. The fact that you've got that nice slow speed movement on the river and still have your detail in the forest, and compositionally having the river come from the right and coming across the front of the photograph is great. Good job with that one. Next photograph in the advanced category is Layered Mountains. That is the second place photo. That's by Wenchi Lee. Very nice processing on this. It's a beautiful photograph that could pass very easily as a nice watercolor or painting. And for first place in the advanced category, it's Magnolia by Nancy Mack. It's just a beautiful photograph. The detail on the flower against that stark background, the way that you've got the rings of light on the outside of the leaves, or the colored detail allows them to stand out against that background. Outstanding photograph. I've given that one a 15. So our first photograph in the Masters category is A Lovely Stroll, and that is by Lois Lehman. I've given that one a 9. One of the reasons that I did that is it's a composite and or layered photograph with some effects on it, and the one thing that I just couldn't get away from and couldn't go back to is where you have the couple walking, the woman does not have a foot, and it just sort of is this black space down there. The man is walking beautifully on that piece of green, looks like he's strolling downhill, but the woman's foot is flat and it actually goes up. Could just be the way that her foot looked in the photograph, but in a natural photograph it may have looked fine depending on what they were walking on. In the composite it just didn't work, and it drew my attention away from the rest of the photograph. I was looking at it. The choice of the black mat was really good too. Next photograph is Fall Splendor, rated a 9 by James Stover. The reason that I was looking at that photograph is that it's got a lot of highlight blowout in it. So you get a lot of very, very bright highlights in the photograph, and adding sharpening to it also creates an effect that sort of distracts from the beautiful colors in the photograph because you've got all these white spots of highlight blowout. That would be the reason that I went with that one. I would just basically cut this one down from an exposure standpoint and get some of those beautiful colors and make the leaves and the beautiful colors the emphasis. Next photograph is Just Do It by Don Champlin. I've given that one an 11. It's actually a gorgeous photograph. Lots of nice detail. Sharpening works in this one. The highlights work in this one from the falling water. Biggest issue with this one is I'm not a fan of the square format on this photo. I think if the photo was maybe portrait mode, it would give it a little bit more length and detail. It sort of shortens the photo in this one and flattens it out a little bit. Next up is White Hood by John Lehman. I've given that a 12. It's a beautiful photograph. There's a little bit too much detail on her nose and some of her skin to the point where we can see her pores, but otherwise a really nice effect. Taking a photo that's this sharp and then laying it onto metallic paper is a good effect. But what I especially like on what you did with this one is the oval mat. The metallic paper, the sharpening gives it a very modern look, and then you've taken it back with the oval frame on it. So very nice photo. Next photo in the Masters category is Stowe Community Church, Vermont by Sam Wilson, and got a point score of 12. Beautiful panoramic on this. Great colors. It really captures Vermont and what you would picture Vermont. The fact that you got the moon up there in the sky is a great added attraction. So good job. Next photo in the Masters category is Reflections in Watercolor by Danette Volkman. That one has got a point score of 12. The effects of the photograph and the colors do give it a very watercolor effect, so good job. Next photo in the Masters category is West New Zealand Coast at Sunset by Linda Grigsby, and that has a point score of 13. That is a beautiful photograph, good detail, good long exposure detail to get the water effect. And the light coming onto the right-hand side against the dark rocks on the left-hand side, you can really get that feel for the last vestige of sunlight as it goes down. It's got the great color as far as the orange sky on the left-hand side and the light coming on that last rock outcropping on the right-hand side. Good job.